Hello and welcome everybody to the second part of this video on negotiations. If you haven't watched the first part, I would recommend watch the first part and then come back and continue watching the second part. So in this video on negotiation, I will be talking about how you can negotiate from a position of weakness, right? So there might be situations where we might find ourselves in a position of weakness. And we might think that we do not really, we cannot really negotiate because we are at a position of weakness. And let me tell you that you can also be a good negotiator from a point of weakness. You just have to understand that the only reason you are entering this negotiation, or the customer or your counterparty, whatever the case may be, is inviting you in this negotiation is because you have some value to deliver. Keep that in mind and try to negotiate on the value rather than thinking, about your weakness. The next thing that you can keep in mind when negotiating is the 5 mistakes you can avoid when preparing for negotiations. So the first thing that might be a mistake is you have involved very few people in the negotiations. What I mean by that is you might find yourself, when you're negotiating with a counterparty, you haven't considered or invited all the decision makers. You might have just invited the people, let's say the CEOs and the board of directors, but you might not have invited the people who really are implementing or would be implementing those decisions at the ground level. So you might want to include and invite a lot of people at the beginning itself, so that later on you do not find yourself getting into a bottleneck by other decision makers. The second mistake to avoid when preparing for negotiations is having too much focus on your arguments and how you will enter the negotiations, rather than on the process of the negotiation itself. So what I mean by that is you want to think about the process of negotiation rather than your argument. And the third thing that you might want to avoid when preparing for negotiation is not thinking about the constraints of the opposite side. The fourth thing that you might want to avoid is focusing too much on the substance and not on the process. The fifth thing that you might want to avoid is being too narrowly focused on